Okay guys, welcome to part 2 of the 5.1 lesson. Let's go ahead and get started and jump right into example 2. This example is using something called a tape diagram. So let me get my pointer. There we are. Follow along with me. The ratio of your monthly allowance to your friend's monthly allowance is 5:3. The monthly allowances total $40. How much is each allowance? Now we're going to use tape diagrams for this example. It says to help visualize the problem, express the ratio 5:3 using a tape diagram. Here's our tape diagrams. So since our ratio is 5:3, we know we need to have 5 parts and 3 parts, creating a total of 8 parts. Now remember, we don't know what each allowance is, you or your friends. What we do know is that the total allowance is $40. See, the allowance is total $40. So we know that these 8 parts must represent a total of $40. And remember, we got the 8 by the 5 parts for your allowance and the 3 parts for your friend's allowance. What we need to do here is figure out what each one of these parts represents in order to find out what your monthly allowance is and what your friend's monthly allowance is. Take a look here. 8 parts equals blank. Well, we know that 8 parts represents the $40. So we'll go ahead and write that in. 8 parts represents $40. Now we need to take a look at what one part represents. So what does this part equal? What does this part equal? What does this part equal? And so on. We can figure that out by taking this $40 total, divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. So 40 divided by 8 parts would give us $5. So one part must equal $5. And I'm going to write a little note to myself here because 40, well, it's a 40 divided by 8 equals 5. Now, since we know that each one part equals $5, we can figure out what this 5 part means. 5 parts and 3 parts are what we still have to figure out. This 5 parts represents your allowance. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for you. And this 3 parts represents your friend's allowance. 1, 2, 3. So for 5 parts, if each one part is $5, we've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, just by counting by 5s. So we know that your allowance is 25, and that's because, BC, 5 parts times $5 each is 25. Same thing for your friend. Since your friend gets 3 for the part of the ratio that's 5:3, 5, 10, 15, your friend's allowance must be $15 because 3 parts times $5 equals 15. So in conclusion, we're going to write down here, so your allowance, it's hard to read, there we go, is $25 and your friend's is $15. And we know that because remember the total monthly allowance is $40. 25 plus 15 equals a total of 40, and it represents this part-to-part relationship of 5:3. 5:3. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 5, 10, 15, 25 to 15, or 5:3. All right, let's take a look down at the bottom here for example 3. It's the same concepts using the tape diagram. We are just taking it a step further and creating our own spaces or our own units within the tape diagram. So let's start just by reading the problem. You separate 42 bulbs of garlic into 2 groups, one for planting and one for cooking. You will plant 3 bulbs for every 4 bulbs that you use for cooking. Each bulb has about 8 cloves. About how many cloves will you plant? Okay, so we know we have 42 bulbs total, and we're breaking them into 2 groups. We've got a planting group and a cooking group. We are going to use 3 bulbs for every 4 bulbs, We're going to plant 3 bulbs every time we cook with 4 bulbs. Okay, so here's my tape diagrams. I need to create the units or the parts within that tape diagram. So I'm going to start with the bigger one. We can kind of ignore this part of the planting when I crossed it off for you. So our cooking one is longer because we need to break it into 4 parts. Our planting one is shorter. We only need 3 parts. So let's take a look at our cooking. We need 4 bulbs for the cooking diagram. I'm going to cut it in half first and then cut the halves in half again. So now I've got a total of 4 parts. Make that one a little clearer. There we go. Total of 4 parts. I can do the same thing now, making the same size parts for my planting tape diagram. We're using the same size because they're both bulbs. They're both containing garlic bulbs. So there's 1 part, 2 part, 3 part. Now I know that my ratio here is going to be 3 to 4 because I have 3 planted bulbs for every 4 cooking bulbs. So 3 to 4, I have a total of 7 parts. 3 parts and 4 parts. So 7 parts equals a total of 42 bulbs because I separated 42 bulbs, and the ratio for the planting versus cooking bulbs is 3 to 4. So those 7 parts up above, right here, represent a total of 42 bulbs. Now keep in mind, each one of these parts does not represent 1 bulb. This entire picture here represents the total of 42 bulbs. We need to figure out what 1 part, how many bulbs it represents. So if we have a total of 42 bulbs, like right here, divided by 7 parts, like right here, how much does each bulb equal? Or I'm sorry, each part equal? Well, we know that 42 divided by 7 equals 6. So each one of these parts must equal 6 bulbs. So where it says 1 part equals blank bulbs, 1 part equals 6 bulbs. So if that's the case, let's move on to where that says 3 parts. 3 parts for our planting section equals 6 bulbs plus 6 bulbs plus 6 bulbs, which is a total of 18 bulbs. And that's because, put in parentheses, 3 parts times 6 bulbs equals 18 bulbs. 4 parts down here for this cooking section is 4 parts times a total of 6 bulbs each part is a total of 24 bulbs. And that's because 4 parts times 6 bulbs for each part equals 24 bulbs. So taking a look back at our question, remember we had 42 bulbs to start. We have 3 bulbs for planting for every 4 bulbs for cooking. Each bulb has about 8 cloves. About how many cloves will you plant? Well, we figured out that our planting tape here, tape diagram, contains 18 bulbs. Even though it's only 3 parts, those 3 parts each represent 6 bulbs total, which gives us 18 bulbs. So if there's 18 bulbs that we're planting, there's 24 bulbs that we're cooking with. We're not worried about the 24 bulbs we're cooking with because the last part of the question says, about how many cloves will you plant? Well, if each bulb has 8 cloves and we're working with 18 bulbs, we can write this planting total (18 bulbs). I'm going to scoot down a little bit. Are 18 bulbs times 8 cloves per bulb equals 18 times 8. You can use a calculator if you'd like. 18 times 8 gives us 144 cloves. All right, my loves, once you finish this part of the notes, there is an exit ticket on Schoology. Go ahead and get started on that. And then your homework is on Big Ideas, also on page 194 if you're using the textbook. And you can start on that if there is time left. Otherwise, get started on it in advisory this afternoon or start it at home. If you start an advisory and have any questions for me, I should be in advisory. Please come see me, and we will review these concepts again tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, and again, welcome back from spring break. Hope it's been a good start to the week for you guys. See you later.